welcome Baltimore County Public School students. My name is Mrs. Norris and I'm the librarian at Joppa View Elementary. I wanted to welcome you in as I read you a story and we talk about different connections we can make as we are listening or reading a story. The first type of connection we can make as we're listening to stories is very personal, and it's called a text-to-self connection. That's when we make a connection between a story and your own life experience and feelings. As we're making these text-to-self connections, you might say, that happened to me, that's an event that happened to me, or when I was younger, that's something that happened to me. When we make a text-to-self connection, you can link your fingers like this, and that can show that connection. Another connection we talk about as we're reading stories is called a text-to-text connection. That's a connection between the characters, setting, or events from one story to another. A lot of times when you're reading series books or you're reading adventure books, the characters have the same plot. They might have the same character traits as the main character, but we can make that connection. So when we're making that connection, we have a text-to-text connection. And the final connection is a little bit difficult. It's called a text-to-world connection. That's a connection between books and events that have happened in the real world. So a lot of times as we're reading stories, we might have listened to something that has happened in the news. If you've traveled to a faraway place, maybe you've seen or heard something that you're listening to in a story. We're going to listen to the story called The Dot by Peter H. Reynolds. As I was looking at the cover of this story, I noticed that the main character has a paintbrush and a paint can. I don't see myself as an artist, but by the time I finished this story, I realized it wasn't really about art. It was about perseverance. So I want you to think to yourself as we listen to The Dot, how can something as a dot have multiple meanings, and how can that be considered artwork? Art class was over, but Vashti sat glued to her chair. Her paper was empty. Vashti's teacher leaned over her blank paper. "Ah, a polar bear in a snowstorm," she said. "Very funny," said Vashti. "I just can't draw." Her teacher smiled. "Just make a mark and see where it takes you." Vashti grabbed a marker and gave the paper a good, strong jab. "There." Her teacher picked up the paper and studied it very carefully. She pushed the paper toward Vashti and quietly said, "Now sign it." Vashti thought for a moment. Well, maybe I can't draw, but I can sign my name. The next week, when Vashti walked into art class, she was surprised to see what was hanging above her teacher's desk. It was a little dot she had drawn. Her dot, all framed in swirly gold. I can make a better dot than that. She opened her never-before-used set of watercolors and set to work. Vashti painted and painted, a yellow dot, a green dot, a red dot, a blue dot. The blue mixed with the red. She discovered that she could make a purple dot. Vashti kept experimenting lots of little dots in many colors. If I can make little dots, I can make big dots too. Vashti splashed her colors with a bigger brush on a bigger paper to make bigger dots. Vashti even made a dot by not painting a dot. At the school art show a few weeks later, Vashti's many dots made quite a splash. Vashti noticed a little boy gazing up at her. "You're really a great artist. I wish I could draw," he said. "I bet you can," said Vashti. "Me? No, not me. I can't draw a straight line with a ruler." Vashti smiled. She handed the boy a blank sheet of paper. "Show me." The boy's pencil shook as he drew his line. Vashti stared at the boy's squiggle, and then she said, "Please, sign it." Boys and girls, as I finished this story, the word that came to my mind was perseverance and inspiration. Vashti didn't believe in herself at the beginning because maybe she thought that her dot wasn't worth an art. But by her teacher's perseverance and by the way that her teacher was behaving and encouraging her, she realized she could be much more. As I was thinking of this, I myself made a text-to-self connection. I don't consider myself an artist, but I do have people in my life that have encouraged me to do things that maybe I've been a little uncomfortable for. As I was thinking about art, I think about my daughters who are constantly drawing family pictures. And to this is their art. They're drawing shapes and they're putting together faces of all of us. My daughter even drew a garden. And this might not go in the Baltimore Museum of Art, but this is her art and this is what she's proud of. As I was also reading the dot, I thought to myself, I made a text-to-text connection. Vashti was kind of a grumpy character in the beginning, and she was really, really frustrated. So as I was reading this, of course, I thought of Pigeon. Pigeon's a very, very grumpy character, but with a little help from his friend Duckling, he gets through. I also thought of another story, Misty Copeland Firebird. Misty Copeland started off in a small town, but she was a brilliant dancer, and it took the encouragement of her dance teacher for her to become a wonderful, beautiful, famous dancer. Text to world, I thought to myself, do I really have a connection? But I did, because as I was thinking about this, I've gone to a lot of art museums, and I think to myself, I wonder if these artists just one day became these beautiful artists with these beautiful pieces of artwork. And I think they've all began just like Vashti, needing a little bit of confidence and a little bit of encouragement from somebody that believed in them. So thank you so much for listening to the story, The Dot, and help me make a text-to-self connection, a text-to-text connection, and a text-to-world connection.